there's a determination in their eyes. There's a solidarity about how they just move together as a group that I hadn't seen since the battlefield. Hadn't seen that since being out on combat patrols with Marine infantry or combat patrols with Marine Army on either Iraq or Afghanistan. But here it is again. There's an emotion that it's hard to describe. I'm trying to pull up what I'm feeling right now because it's really an overwhelming pride. It is what's pulling me to tears. Not sadness, not fear, but pride.
This is the Mountain and Prairie Podcast. I'm Ed Robertson. My guest today is Jason Gardner. Jason is a retired Navy SEAL who now works as a top-level leadership instructor with Echelon Front. Over his 30-year career in the SEAL teams, he served in combat operations in Somalia, Iraq, and Afghanistan, later becoming Command Master Chief of SEAL Team 5. Since retiring from the Navy, Jason has worked with hundreds of organizations as a leadership instructor and strategic advisor, helping teams apply high-stakes leadership principles to business and life. He now lives in a remote corner of northeastern Washington with his wife Iris and their 2 children, where he spends his time working on their homestead and staying closely connected to the land. This is Jason's second time on the podcast, and I'd strongly recommend going back and listening to our first conversation from 2021, along with the other episode I recorded with his wife Iris. Those earlier interviews dig deeper into Jason's career, his transition out of the military, and the longer arc of their family's journey. Context that adds real depth to what we talk about here. This conversation unfolds in 2 parts. The first half hour or so is a first-hand account of the Hope Fire, a fast-moving wildfire that came dangerously close to destroying Jason and Iris's property and home last summer. Jason walks through the experience in detail, what it's like to prepare for evacuation, to work through exhaustion and uncertainty, and to rely on firefighters, neighbors, and community when the stakes are painfully real. In the second part, we widen the lens. Jason reflects on the lessons that emerged from the fire about leadership, humility, and responsibility, and connects them to his own personal evolution over the last several years. We talk about PTSD, quitting drinking, the role psychedelic-assisted therapy played in his healing, and how practices like mindfulness, curiosity, kindness, and gratitude have reshaped how he approaches both life and leadership. It's an honest, grounded conversation about resilience, growth, and what it actually means to lead, starting with yourself. As always, be sure to check out the episode notes for a full list of everything we discussed, with timestamps for everything. There are also links to all the books and resources that Jason mentions. But before we get started, I want to take a moment to thank the people and organizations who make Mountain and Prairie possible. As always, the podcast is listener-supported through Patreon, so a huge thank you to everyone who's supported the show in the past, does now, or will in the future. It truly makes a difference. If you'd like to learn more about listener support, you can head to mountainandprairie.com/Patreon. Mountain and Prairie is also supported by a small number of values-aligned organizations on a quarterly or annual basis. A sincere thank you to Central Grasslands Roadmap, the Nature Conservancy, North Bridger Bison, and the Old Salt Co-op. These are all organizations that I've admired for a very long time, and you can learn more about each of them through the links in the episode notes. Today, I want to quickly highlight my friends at North Bridger Bison. North Bridger Bison is owned by Matt and Sarah Skoglund, 2 people I met through this podcast who have since become close friends. Tucked up against the North Bridger Mountains, amid a wide expanse of grass and sagebrush, North Bridger Bison is a family-run ranch producing healthy, delicious, humanely field-harvested bison meat. Matt and Sarah started North Bridger Bison back in 2018, and the business has grown into a shining example of how values-driven work can genuinely make the world a better place. Matt's been on the podcast twice, so I'd encourage you to go back and listen to those earlier episodes for his full story. But here are the cliff notes. He grew up near Chicago, went to college in the Northeast, attended law school, and then spent several years practicing law at a large Chicago firm. Eventually, he and Sarah felt the pull of the West and took a leap of faith, moving to Bozeman. Matt went on to work for the Natural Resources Defense Council for nearly a decade, focusing on conservation issues across the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, many of them involving bison. And then in 2018, after years of planning and dreaming, they bought land and started their adventure in bison ranching. A big part of what makes North Bridger bison special is how they manage the land. Matt and Sarah practice regenerative grazing that works with natural systems rather than against them, moving bison across the landscape in ways that mimic historic grazing patterns, building soil health, improving water retention, and supporting native grasses and wildlife. The result is healthier land, healthier animals, and ultimately healthier food. Over the years, North Bridger bison has gained well-earned recognition throughout the West. In 2022, Matt and Sarah placed a conservation easement on their ranch, permanently protecting it from development. I used to work in the conservation world helping landowners do exactly that, and I can tell you, it's not for the faint of heart. It's real, tangible, perpetual commitment. The ranch is also Audubon certified, which is another impressive credential. A few summers back, I had the opportunity to visit the ranch and participate in a field harvest of a bison. It was really a formative experience, humane, thoughtful, and reverent, and it gave me a much deeper appreciation for what it takes to bring truly good food from the land to the table. I'd encourage you to visit northbridgerbison.com to learn more about what they do and how they do it, and consider purchasing some bison. You'll get some of the best meat you can imagine, and you'll be directly supporting land conservation, stewardship, and the idea that business can be a genuine force for good. And if nothing else, grab a hat or a t-shirt. We've got several North Bridger bison hats around our house, and our entire family is always scrambling to claim one. Again, you can learn more at northbridgerbison.com, sign up for their newsletter, or follow them on Instagram at northbridgerbison. All right, I hope you enjoy this conversation with Jason Gardner, and I also hope you enjoy the new music. After nearly 10 years of listening to that same song over and over, I thought it might be time for a refresh. Thanks so much for listening. All right, Jason, I am really excited to have you back on here. It's crazy because I was looking at the old episode we did, and I was trying to remember when it was because it didn't seem like that long ago, but it was 2021, March of 2021. And I just think about how much has changed both personally, professionally, globally since that first chat you and I had. But I often think back to both our chat and the chat with your awesome wife, Iris, is really just conversations that stick with me. And I still get comments about them all these years later. And Iris needs to get back on here ASAP as well. But you and I had the great opportunity to meet and hang out here in Colorado Springs in the summer, which was so fun. And we went and destroyed some sushi and had an awesome conversation for about 3 hours. But since then, you went home after that, and I was following everything it was up to. And then next thing you know, a massive forest fire comes ripping through your area and comes, starts threatening your family's property, which y'all have been working so hard on for so long. So I was thinking we could start out just by talking about that. Can you just give me the download, man? What happened?
We live in northeastern Washington. We moved up here from the southern border. We were living right in East County, San Diego, essentially right on the Mexican border there. And we weathered out 2 wildfires when we lived down there. So this is our third.
Wow.
I can compare and contrast those experiences here in a bit. Afternoon during the week, my son and I were down in Spokane, which is 2.5 hours away. And I start getting these text messages that there's a fire, and that day was about 104 degrees, and the winds were blowing about 20 miles an hour, maybe even faster than that. And, I get a text message, hey, there's a fire, and then more text messages, and then Iris is hitting me up, and we realize, oh, shoot, we've got to get home. And so we start driving home. Apparently the fire started about 4 miles as the crow flies from where I live, directly like straight west of us. And a guy that just lives here seasonally had come out, wanted to run his riding mower, and the mower didn't start. And so he used one of those little jumper deals to jump his battery. And he did. He got his mower started and he drove off, and that little handheld jump starter fell off, arced on the grass. And once it hit that dry grass, it was gone. Like there was nothing he was doing to stop it, because everything was just, it was the perfect storm waiting for that. And so then the fire started burning basically on a northeast line, and it tore through a bunch of stuff pretty fast. As I was half an hour out or across the river, because the roads were blocked, I had to come in a back way to get to our house, because the roads were blocked with the firefighters and all that coming in from one direction. I could see the flames, burning. Iris is like, hey, we need to get ready to evacuate. She's already getting stuff packed up to go. We hook up the whole horse trailer to move our horses. And then one of the neighbors that was in the direct path of the fire, they needed help moving their horses. So I get back, boom, get in the horse trailer, get the horse trailer set up. And then we go down and we start helping our neighbor evacuate their horses. And we were taking them to a place about 5 miles east of us. Get the horses out there, and then then she's like, hey, we got to go back. They have more horses up at their house. So as we're driving back there, the fire now has split, jumped from one ridgeline to another one, and then came across the other way. So it had jumped the road, and as I was going up to get horses, all the firefighters were bailing out at that point. So now there's all these fire trucks and other people bailing out. Now, not everybody bailed. Some of my neighbors stayed and basically fought the fire the best they could in a 360. And another one of my neighbors had to get out just, as he lost his house. So I then had to back the horse trailer down to let everybody go past us. They all went past, and then that was the last that anyone could go up that road for a while. And the thing just raged. But basically, it's to the west of me, and it looks like it's going to burn just past us. The main direction that it's burning, it's going to burn past to us to the north and to the west of us by about 1.5 miles, 2 miles. And then the other thing is like, fires, tornadoes, floods. They're always things that you kind of think happen to other people, and you're like, it's not going to happen to me, right? And I'm like, okay, we're good. We get our horses evacuated. We get what did we have? We had the chickens locked in the chicken coop so that we could get them boxed up and in the horse trailer, because now we have the big truck and the horse trailer to load with stuff. We had our cats locked in the bathroom and the dogs locked in the schoolhouse. So essentially, and then go bags with important documentation and stuff you just didn't want to lose, and had that stuff packed. And then the focus shifted at that point. We're like, okay, we're ready. But man, we're not leaving until it's like right on top of us. So all these fire trucks are starting to show up, and there's all different, you got DNR fighters, which is Department of Natural Resources, got the state folks. And then I see the small fire engine, right? It's got a small thing, and it's got a USAA sticker on the window. And I have my fire insurance through USAA. So I go up to them, and I think the name of the company is Capstone. They're contracted firefighters. And I walk up to the truck, and this is like a medium-sized truck, but it's got 4 guys in it, and it's got a hose on the back and all that. And I ask them, I go, hey, do you guys work for USAA? And they said, yeah. And I go, that's crazy. I got my home insurance through USAA. So they go, are you Jason Gardner? And I said, yeah. And they go, well, we're here to watch your house. So the cool thing about it was USAA sends out contracted firefighters when there's a fire near homes they cover, and they're not the only insurance company that does this. Other ones do it too. But these guys were dedicated to make sure my house and another house down the road didn't go. So they go up to my house, they walk around the whole thing, and then they did an assessment. They're like, hey, I had an air conditioner upstairs. They're like, hey, you need to take that air conditioner out of the window because that could catch sparks or whatever. They moved all the propane tanks away from the house. They did a bunch of other stuff to kind of fire safe my house. So that was nice, right?
Yeah, definitely. Unexpected. I would never have imagined that.
No, me neither. It was really, really cool. And if you think about it from my financial standpoint, it makes sense.
Sure.
Because it costs way less to send firefighters out than it does to rebuild my house and put my family up in a hotel for the year and a half that might take. So it's the evening time, and then Ira's just being kind of the way she is. She organizes stuff, and our whole community just came together and mobilized. So the folks that there were a bunch of folks that evacuated, but even though they were evacuated, because there was a mandatory evacuation, but in Washington State, you don't have to do it, right? So I guess it's not mandatory, but they're like, hey, you need to get out of here. They went into the next town across the river, and they started cooking meals and taking donations. And so then there's this little coffee shop right across the river in North Portland. Bear with me because I'm going to get emotional while I talk about this, probably several times. And they started just taking donations and were buying food and cooking food and then bringing meals out and bringing drinks out and bringing all kinds of stuff out. And so right in front of the schoolhouse, that's where it became the spot for the firefighters, which the schoolhouse, the property that we own, we live in a tiny little cabin, like 900 square feet. And on the 3-acre property that we own right here in this little chunk, we own more behind it, but there's a 100-year-old schoolhouse that we fixed up and run as an Airbnb. And so and it has a little parking lot in front of it. So that became kind of a central spot for everybody that wasn't at the fire camp. And the fire camp was it's almost 40-minute drive away. So we're putting out drinks, and then people started bringing stuff like Visine and stuff for the firefighters, and not all the firefighters can take it. The DNR folks can't take stuff from the public, but the state folks can, and then the contracted, the different contracted folks, they can too. So it became a hub and kind of a center for information and all that. And a situation like that happens where I'm going now back and forth to there. I've got a couple neighbors over at the one road just down the road where I was telling you we evac the horses from. They're still there, and they're still fighting fire, and they're essentially, the firestorm has rolled past them, but there's still stuff popping up, and they're still in danger. So they're still doing what they can to save their properties. And so I'm bouncing back and forth checking on them, and then about 9:00 at night, the winds changed, and now the fire, which is directly north of us, starts burning straight south, and it starts coming straight east down the road that runs east-west toward us. So it's now coming at us from two directions. And I'm thinking, damn it. And I'm looking at the fuel load that's directly across the street from me. And basically it's, because it's timber company owns it, so no one's managing it for fire. Now, I don't own it. And so you've got hazelnut growing all the way up into the bottom of the pine and the fir, right? So when that hits that, it's all the fuel is going to set the trees on fire. They turn into just huge torches. It's going to come across the street. That's going to be like a blowtorch blowing straight at us. We're going to lose everything. There's no way to defend it. So it's not looking good. And the contracted fire guys that USAA sent, they foamed our house down, and just like this precautionary. There's a lot of embers flying around. You could see the embers in the air, so they foamed us down. And then I was sitting there and I was like, well, our house is going to burn down, but it's just, kind of like coming to peace with that. It's just stuff. And it's coming down the mountainside toward us. And I go, well, shoot, I'll hook the brush hog up on my tractor and I've got lights. I'll just get back there and do what I can to start, A, knocking down the fuel that I've got under some of my bigger fir trees back there, and B, just trying to cut some fire line and cut lines around a shed I've got back there and other stuff. So I did that all night long. And then the property that's directly across the street from us, I figured, hey, I don't own it, but I don't think the owners are going to fault me for knocking the brush down there either. So then I did that well into the morning the next morning. So 3 a.m. is when I was up on the back property, like hammering that down. And then I had that to a level, worked my way back down, cutting fire breaks in different spot. And then when the sun came up by 6 a.m., I'm on the tractor running my brush hog, about destroyed my brush hog because I can't see in the dark. So I was hitting rocks and stuff like that, but I was knocking down the brush directly across the street. And then neighbors are bringing coffee and stuff like that. And they're coming up to me and giving me like carry cups of coffee. And as I'm gassing up and I'm running that. So that got a good handle on it. Seems like the fire is broken up. Well, then I went back up to the backside about 9 a.m. It's really starting to burn heavy into that property. It's jumped a couple of the fire breaks I've done. And at this point, I was driving on the fire line with my brush hog and just knocking the fire out with the brush hog, using it just to chop it up, which is good when you're on drivable terrain. But then I got in some stuff and I'm like, hey, this is dumb. I'm going to roll my tractor and get myself hurt. So I got on the phone. I told Iris, hey, can you tell some of the firefighters we need help up here? I've got power because we're getting ready to build on that property and we'd run power up there. That was really expensive to do. And now the panel is going to melt. And then we have a shed and we have bees back there. So, luckily I call her on the phone. She answers the phone and there's a crew down here, like at the schoolhouse, grabbing drinks or whatnot. And she tells them, and then they came up there and they're like, all right, we got this. And there was a crew that basically stood up there for that day while it was burning in and around our place back up there on my back 40 that cut a fire line or to save a dozen beehives that were back there. They saved my shed, and then they cut a fire line to save the power panels, that we'd spent a bunch of money on, which I'm really grateful for. Things kind of, okay, we're still in the thick of it. Our neighbors are still in the thick of it, but it seems like, hey, we've got a handle on it and we're safe here. That night, I think, so however long that is, it's the first night that Iris and I got a 3-hour nap. And then we were back up at it. And now the fire is raging to the north of us, raging to the east of us now. And this is when big assets are starting to show up. So, all the contract skidgens. Do you know what a skidgen is?
I've heard the term, but I don't know what it is.
They're essentially like the big heavy duty log skidders that loggers use way in the back country to pull logs out of really rough terrain.
Oh yeah.
And then they'll put an 800-gallon tank on it and use it to fight fire in the backcountry. So essentially, they're just Mad Max vehicles. These owner-operators all over the West Coast, have taken these things and tricked them out, because these guys come in and these guys contracted. They're making $4,000 a day fighting these fires. And so these big low boys are pulling up at a big pullout just down the street, and all these crazy, and if you look up skidgen online, there's just no cookie cutter version. There are all kinds of crazy different stuff of them. Some of them look like there was one that pulled off that looked like a monster truck. It was really, really cool. But then the big heavy duty D8 bulldozers and all that. So at this point, this is now we're in day 3.
What's your mental state at this point? I mean, because you're sleep deprived, everything you've been working for 7 years, I guess, at this point since retirement is threatened. I guess you feel the family is relatively safe, but like, are you freaking out? Are you?
No, man, this is right where I'm hitting my stride.
Okay.
This is what I was born and bred to do. 30 years in the SEAL teams, all that time on the battlefield. This is right where it's like, okay, cool. This is just like deployment. Stuff's going really bad. We got stuff. And so it's not like I said, this is, I'm up on step essentially, or really hitting my stride. And Iris, she's cut from the same way. Like we had a really horrendous fire in Southern California when we lived there that burnt right around our property, killed 2 of our neighbors. The evacuation was really strict in Southern California. And so a lot of our neighbors evacuated because they're kind of run out. We just didn't evacuate. And, we're smart. We put on like raincoats and the same clothes that we saw everybody else wearing. So we didn't stand out and just stayed. And then a lot of our neighbors, since they'd evacuated, their animals had run out of water, had run out of food. And so Iris started this whole thing to go and get water to animals and get food to animals and all that. And so she's just hard that way. She's one of those people that can make decisions under pressure. Anyhow, that's where my mental state is. It's like, okay, cool.
That's what I figured. I
Iris,
the opposite.
He's right. Like, hey, what's going on? What do we do? Well, you know what? You'll be amazed when you get locked into a good community, that calm is contagious and everybody then comes together as a team.
Sure.
And works hard. And that's what we had going on here. So the morning of that 3rd day, I wound up talking to the incident commander for a little bit. And it was cool because he was a guy that was exposed to extreme ownership. And I'm like, hey, I work for Jocko. This is what I do for a living, blah, blah, blah. I teach it. And he was like, oh, that's so cool. So him and I are chatting. And then a couple of my friends from the town that's 45 minutes away, they just came out. Everyone's like, hey, do you need help? And I'm like, well, we think we're good. And instead of saying, do you need help? They just showed up. Right. And these guys have got skills. They're loggers. They can do a bunch of stuff. They got all their chainsaws. So they showed up. And in the morning, I'm like, hey, we're good here. So they went over to one of my neighbors who was still completely kind of surrounded, had hot spots popping around his house and just needed more defensible space. And so they went over there and ran saws and started clearing back defensible space. And then we're putting out hot spots because it was crazy. Like the fire would be completely out, and the humidity levels would come up over at night. And then 2:00 in the afternoon, humidity drops, wind picks up, and the fire is like raging again, just like comes out of the ground and is raging again in places where it wasn't before or had been, but now it's burning again. And so in the morning, I was good. And then the guy stopped by in the afternoon and for lunch here because they were done helping out my neighbor. And I'm like, and they said, hey, are you good? And I'm like, well, you know what? I could use a little bit of help up on my property. And so we go back to my back 40. And as we're back there, and we were just kind of clearing around a couple trees I'm planted because I'm really into trees. I planted a ton of trees on my back 40. The fire now kicks up, has new energy and new strength. And now it starts coming at us like in a wall from the east. Came at us from the west, came at us from the north, and now here it comes from the east with with a lot of energy and a lot of, like it's now coming. So it's like the same now wall of flames is tearing through trees. So as we're watching, I'm watching it come across my property line, which I figured, it'll be good back there. Nope. Trees are just going up like torches. and it comes through and rolls through and hits me from the east side. And then we just wound up fighting it where we could to just save as much of my property that we could. And we have a couple of really deep canyons that are loaded with cedar. It got into those, and cedar have a tendency to grow hollow, so the fire will get inside of them and they'll stovepipe and then collapse, which is super dangerous. And so we were back there fighting that fire, and one of the guys that had come to help me, he'd spent some time on wildland fire crews, and he was like, hey, he cut fir branches down. And so we had these big fir boughs that we were using just to beat out the grass fires and knock them down. So we were doing that. There was some stuff that was just too strong for us to get, and our volunteer engine came up and knocked it down because I had an outhouse kind of burn and all that. So it was bad. And I came back down to the fire department and now back down in front, not the fire department, but in front of the schoolhouse. And now that incident commander is down there, and he looks at me and he goes, hey man, because the fire is coming at us from the east. He goes, I'm not going to let your place burn. And a couple of low boys had already pulled up. The D8s got off of them, these big bulldozers. They cut 2 fire lines. Now, here's the time when I'm going to get emotional.
All good, man. This is a big damn deal.
They cut these 2 fire lines between our place and where the fire is just raging over the hill. And he goes, hey, we got a shock crew is what they were calling them, but I guess which is a pretty cool name. Yeah. That's gonna man, and I guess it's just another term for the hot shots, and I've heard of the hot shots before. And they're gonna man that top fire line, and if the fire winds up jumping it, then they'll set a backfire from the backfire line up towards the front one, and we'll be able to handle it. You guys will be okay. So this is like a slow motion train wreck, right? This fire is raging, but it's like it's going to be half an hour before it gets to us. But you can see by the trajectory and the momentum that it have that it's coming full speed. So I get on my ATV, and at this point I have a little pump sprayer rigged up on the back of the ATV because I wanted to go up and I just wanted to get my eyes on the shock crew. I'm going to be honest with you. I couldn't differentiate them just looking at them from all the other fire crews and firefighters that were out here. They were all freaking awesome. They're rugged. They're dirty. They're so dirty that you can't even tell, and it doesn't matter what gender they are. And there was plenty of women mixed in with the men, fighting just as hard and just as efficiently as far as I could tell. And so they've got all this heavy gear on. They've got those, the Nomex yellow coats and all that. And they're dirty. They're carrying all kinds of heavy equipment, like the fire crews. Everyone has like a different heavy, gnarly looking tool that essentially looks like some kind of medieval weaponry. There's a determination in their eyes. There's a solidarity about how they just move together as a group that I hadn't seen since the battlefield. Hadn't seen that since being out on combat patrols with Marine infantry or combat patrols with Marine Army on either Iraq or Afghanistan. But here it is again. And it was freaking... there's an emotion that it's hard to describe. I'm trying to pull up what I'm feeling right now because it's really an overwhelming pride. It is what's pulling me to tears. Not sadness, not fear, but pride.
When they're doing it in service, just like you did overseas, is they're not, it's one thing if somebody's family is threatened. Of course, everybody's going to go all in, but these people didn't even know you, and they didn't know your family, and they didn't know that, didn't know the community, and they're doing it for you.
They have an enemy. It's a clear enemy. It's the fire, right? It's the fire and the weather. They're doing it for each other. as much as they're doing it for us.
Yeah.
Because I suspect a lot of them, there's something that you get out of doing hard stuff against something that's like an enemy with a bond, and that's really what Sebastian Junger is talking about in that book called Tribe.
I was just thinking about that. I actually just wrote that down. I remember we talked about that at dinner, this idea of purpose and community.
And so everybody, they're all coming together. And so I see them, and I don't want to get in their way. So I'm probably back 70 yards, and I watch them hike up the fire break, circle up, start talking. So they're doing whatever their brief is about what they're about to do. And then they just went off. They went off towards the fire into harm's way. And then I came back down to the house and could see them, but they're far enough away to pull binos out to really get a good eye on it. And the incident commander is like, hey, check, do you see what they're doing? Do you see how everybody on that fire line is standing with their back to the fire? So they all went out, and the crew lead, he's watching the fire. Everybody else has their back to it, and they're watching the grass in front of them so that if anything jumps the fire line, they can run and jump at it. Dude, think about the trust that takes. And that was just awesome. So they were able, they held the fire at that first fire line, saved our house. That night, I went back and looked at some of the line that they'd cut. There's stuff that they did with bulldozers, but there were fire lines that they cut that, you're not getting a dozer up there. You're not getting any equipment up there. And it's rugged and it's steep and it's hot. And here they cut this line through carrying all that equipment in an area. When I walked the fire line with another guy, I was just walking with, a water bottle, and I was winded.
Yeah.
And I wasn't cutting fire line, and here they are. They cut it all the way down to, what do they say? The mineral soil. So nothing will burn, which in some spots that means that they were digging, a foot down through the duff to get to mineral. It is crazy. It's super impressive. It's awesome. And, I'd sit down and we wound up putting up tents and then serving 3 meals a day down here in front of the schoolhouse to both the folks that had stayed to try and protect the stuff, to our volunteer firefighters, and then every firefighter that was welcome, and all the contracted guys, they were stoked on it. They were coming here for the free meals. And then we had big coolers full of liquid IV or any of the energy drinks that they liked, electrolyte drinks and stuff like that, and then just drinks and sodas or whatever. And so hang out and talk with firefighters down there, and the neighbors, would come together. And one of the firefighters or the incident commander and a bunch of the firefighters told us, to go, hey, you guys have a really special community here, because we don't see this it's really rare that we kind of see this community support. And that's because of a multitude of things. One, we were allowed to stay, our sheriffs, they let people in through the lines. They're like, hey, you can stay. And they were here asking us. They got out of their vehicles and asked us, hey, what do you need? And they were helping fight fire and evacuate animals. And that was awesome. And then the incident commander, when he got here, he's like, hey, who is still here? Are all their animals okay? What can we do?
Well, that kind of a question related to all that. You're in the leadership business. I mean, you have been your entire career, but now you're out teaching regular people like me how to be a leader. And I feel like when you describe this, it is really the best of human beings, working together towards a common purpose against an enemy as a community, just going as hard as you can. I mean, and a lot of some of that is because a lot of those firefighters, they're obviously highly trained, but there's something in their brain that makes them want to do that kind of work. Just like there was something in your brain that made you pursue your career in the military. Like how do you take lessons from that and apply it to, say, a bunch of people in an office building doing finance. Because if you could just get 1% of that and apply it to a business, the business world or something outside, I mean, you can just imagine what a powerful thing that would be. So I'm curious about how do you translate all that, whether it's that or your experience in combat? I mean, how do you get normal people to not only understand it, but to act in a way that harnesses a bit of that without your life being on the line and property being on the line? Does that make sense?
You just make them feel like they belong and care about your people. And guess what? That means you might have to pay them a little bit more, or you know what? You better, because they're people. And and this is counterintuitive, because businesses who do pay their employees more tend to make more money, because guess what? And there are a lot of indicators to other people that let them know that you care about them. Pay is just one of them. But if I'm working for you and I know that you care about me and you respect me, well, that means that my biggest fear is disappointing you. I'm going to work hard for you. I'm going to have a vested interest in seeing that this business is doing well, because this business has become my tribe. You can't like pull a Dwight Schrute and do a big fire alarm and blowtorch door handles. There isn't a existential threat when you're in an office building that pulls everybody together. So we have to look at other ways that, we can come together as a team, and we can just talk about, hey, this is what we do, and this is why what we're doing, this is why this matters to us. And then that's it. I think about all the leaders that I work for in the Navy, and I'll put them into two buckets. One set of leaders I worked hard for, because if I didn't, they'd yell at me. And there was another set of leaders, and, even in the SEAL teams, this was a minority of the leaders, but I worked hard for them because I was afraid of disappointing them. And when I did the forensics on this, when I look back and I'm like, well, what made me care about whether or not these people would be disappointed in me? What was it about these leaders? Because they had different styles. But there was a couple things that they all had in common. Number one, they treated me with respect. They didn't talk down to me. And two, I knew they cared about me. And that's all I needed to just go, I'm going to work hard for you. Now, is that foolproof? No, there's slugs everywhere. There's slugs everywhere that are going to take advantage of Easy Street and all that. But you know what? They're the minority. There's 95% of the people, when you treat them with respect, when you care about them, are going to reciprocate that and work hard for you. Any of us will take those odds to Vegas. It's not foolproof. Enough people reciprocate it. It's the way to go.
Can you talk about how humility plays a role, whether in your personal life, your professional life, leadership? Because that's one thing that's always struck me about you and Iris. And really, I don't know a lot of your colleagues. I have this weird thing where I feel like I know them because I listen to them so much on podcasts, but I don't actually know them. But in a lot of ways, for somebody on the outside who hasn't spent a lot of time kind of entrenched in your world, I feel like I have just by listening in, you would think, all right, elite level military operators, high level business people, all this, that there could be like a arrogance or a lot of ego running around. But what you preach over and over and over and over, and all your colleagues preach, is this idea of dropping your ego, getting rid of your ego, being humble. I mean, I would say that's one of the top, if not the top thing that I hear you talk about a lot, and not just talk about, you live it. And I don't really have a specific question there as much as I'd love to just hear your thoughts on humility, because it's the character trait that I admire most in people. And on the opposite side, I can't stand arrogance. I mean, it's getting worse the older I get. I need to chill out. But as I get to know people like you who are elite, who are humble, I'm like, how can anybody else be arrogant? How can you be arrogant? If Jason Gardner's humble, why is this clown over here arrogant? Can you just tell me a little bit about your thoughts on humility?
Humility most important leadership trait, most important trait to being a good person. And so humility is really misunderstood because people will mistake humility with meekness. Oh, the person's quiet. Oh, they're too humble. They can't make a decision. No, humility is just a measure of how well you have your ego under control. And the controlling your ego is just like trying to fight a forest fire. You know, it takes so much discipline to control the ego. There's an ancient Chinese military philosopher, Wu Shi, is around before Sun Tzu, and he wrote that a medieval general is at the biggest risk for a defeat after his third victory. And people have seen this all the time with sporting teams too, right? You'll see a football team, they're up 40 points, and then they take their feet off the gas and they quit playing. And then typically right after they trounce somebody, the next game, they're going to lose it. And then they'll probably lose the next game because they lose that drive, right? And so the humility is difficult to have, and it's a struggle, and it's a daily struggle for me because I'm constantly fighting my ego and having to remind myself. So I have some strategies on how I do this, and they all come with internal questioning and asking myself in my internal dialogue. And my internal dialogue is like, are you infallible? No, I'm not. Boy, you better watch out. If you're telling yourself you know everything, that's problematic. And that means that your ego's out of control. What's coming for you is the world is going to humble you, because it will every time. And that's why not just get in front of it and keep an open mind. Frank Zappa has an awesome quote about having an open mind and having it being kind of like a parachute. You want to have an open mind because it's like a parachute. Closed mind, you're going to crash. Open mind, you can cruise down, and then you can consider other people's perspectives, and you can consider that you might be mistaken. So, and all of this is a dichotomy. And so then you keep an open mind and you pause before you rush to judgment. Right now in the political landscape, something that I don't like is that people, and it's because people are tribal, and they'll choose a team. And so everybody's chosen teams right now. And then the teams are doing things that are in opposition to those people's fundamental values. Yet they're supporting the team blindly, which is dumb. And it's really annoying me. It's annoying me that right now I am taking a break from the news.
Good move.
Because I don't like how it's making me feel. And there's not much that I can do about it. And what I notice is when I'm feeling bad, I'm tacked into that negative energy because I'm frustrated. That negative energy is influencing how I interact with my kids, my wife, my community. And I need to hit the pause button in a big way and look at, well, what can I actually affect? How I interact with my neighbors. I can affect how I treat people. Then I'm kind of tilted towards the positive. And when you look for the positive, there's a lot of it to see in my community, my local area, and that's all I can affect. Then you start to see it more and more, and you feel better.
Last week, I went down I generally don't look at any news, and last week I started looking at it, and by Friday, I was just looking back. It was almost like I was in this fog of kind of anger and worry and just really not in a good spot. And then I starting on Saturday, we're recording this on Tuesday. I stopped looking at the news, and I'm like a different person. I think that's huge. What I would love to talk a bit about something we talked about at dinner, which is along the lines of this, is your personal evolution. Because when we talked the first time, you were 2 years out of the military, and now it's been almost 5 years since that conversation. I'd love to hear more about kind of how you have kind of reintegrated into the civilian world. Some of your thoughts, because you gave me this awesome challenge coin. First of all, you gave my daughters challenge coins. I was telling my daughters we were going to talk today, and they were so excited. And my youngest said, I keep the challenge coin in my box of special things. So like, I mean, they love it, but then you sent me one and it's got the words on it. It's a different one from your normal one. It says curiosity, kindness, and gratitude. And I keep this on my desk. And could you just talk a bit about where those three kind of concepts, why they're so important to you?
So they're an antidote to negativity and toxic emotions. Is if I can become curious about why I'm experiencing anger or fear, really, and hatred, or all those things, really, fear is I think the king of it. That's what's underneath it all. Then that helps. Then gratitude, just having a sense of gratitude, like, hey man, I can go turn the faucet and fresh water is going to come out. I am healthy right now. I have, I've got there's a lot of good things. And instead of focusing on the few negative things that are happening on the other side of the country, hey, those things are important, but they shouldn't be my everyday, all day focus, right? I'll deal with that when I go to vote. And I also may deal with that when I have conversations with friends, where we just discuss, hey, here's what's going on in the world, but we're going to do that in a collaborative manner. And I'm not going to do it in a manner where I say that you're right and I'm wrong. So curiosity, kindness, and gratitude are just a better way to live. If you look at our major philosophies, Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, the best I understand most of it, that at the core is kindness, right? Like, hey, freaking be nice to people, because here's the thing. When you're nice to people, they're nice to you back. When you treat people with respect, they treat you with respect back. So you can immediately improve your life situation by focusing on kindness. And I noticed this. I had an epiphany, and it had to do with homeless people. I used to be one of these folks that was like, get a job, loser. Oh, I bet that homeless person standing on the corner, and then at the end of the day, they get in a Mercedes, and we're all just chumps for helping them out. I doubt that's the case. I doubt that being homeless is a fun party lifestyle. I bet it sucks. I certainly have money that can help them out. And I'll tell you this, though. So I had this experience. This is 2 years ago now. It was during the holiday season. I was in Spokane with my kids, and I pulled in front of the Hobby Lobby. And the parking spot that was open, there was a driver. There was a car that was combat parked, so they backed into the spot, right? And the driver was sitting in the car, and the window was down. So he's just sitting there, and the guy's sitting there, and he has his head is in his hands. Because of course I have to get out, and he's right there and paying attention to him. And when I get out of the car, he looks up and he says, "Hey man, could you help me out? I need some gas money." I get all righteous, and I was like, "Well, why aren't you over at the gas station if you need gas money?" And he goes, "It's right there." I rolled my eyes at him. I sighed, and then I gave him $10. But I gave him $10 in a real shitty way. 20 steps away from him, and as I was like, now I'm going through, like, I do this all the time. I do and this is something I learned in the SEAL teams is we do a debrief. Like, hey, how'd that go? What could I do better next time? And as I was going through that, I was like, you completely jacked that up. You completely jacked up that interaction. That's not a place where panhandlers typically hang out. That person needed help. They didn't need you to make them feel any worse than they already felt, and you could have helped them out.
Why do you think you thought that you had been thinking one way for a long time, and then all of a sudden you thought about it differently? What was different?
Because Iris had been putting it in my ear forever. Every time we'd get around a homeless person, she's like, dude, look how bad that sucks for that person. Yeah, I'm like, they're mentally ill. I'm like, okay. She's like, yeah, that the poor person is mentally ill and they're out on the street. That's awful. And so she had it in my ear, and it just made me feel weird. And I'll tell you, it also is paying attention, like having some mindfulness about how you feel. And when I'm nasty to somebody, or like nasty to a homeless person, it makes me feel gross for a while. I don't like that feeling. So I came back out of the parking lot and I was really hoping that he was still out there because I wanted to apologize to him. I wanted to offer him some support. And so I got home and I have a pretty decent social media following, and I did a post on social media like, hey, here's what just happened. Here's how I jacked that up. Here's what I should have done. I should have said something to him like, hey man, what's your name? And then when he told me your name, like, bro, you're going to be able to get through whatever you've got going on, but here's some money so you got some help from me. Hang in there. That's what I should have said to him. I should have offered him a hand up instead of looking at him like some, oh man, there's that classic meme that's been going around where there's like the three French guys up in the balcony and they've got the wigs and they look like they're better than you, you know? And the meme was going around like, you know, what was it? Like people that have their own chickens right now when eggs are expensive are all aristocratic and looking down at, you know, all the lily people. And no, I don't want to be that guy. And that guy's life isn't good. And by that, I mean people who think they're aristocratic and better off than him. Their lives aren't good. They're crappy. So a year later, the kitchen faucet's about to break. And that's a problem that you want to get ahead of, right? Because it's going to decide to break at 8:00 at night on a Sunday when you can't fix it. So I go into Home Depot, and as it happened, I got into Home Depot 5 minutes before they closed. Dude, there's a lot of choices for faucets. It takes me 30, 40 minutes to choose a faucet and then check out a Home Depot, go out into the parking lot. Parking lot's essentially empty. It's raining. It's dark out. And I come out of the Home Depot and I see my car, past my car another 30 yards. I can see what is a homeless guy like shuffling across the parking lot. He sees me, I see him, we have eye contact, and he changes direction and he starts coming towards me. Now he's 60 yards away. So it's not a surprise, right? And I go, okay, I prep myself, okay, let's try and deal with the situation differently. And then we'll do the internal debrief and see how it goes. So he gets into about that 7-yard range. He says, hey, can you spare some money for bus fare? I don't have any money for the bus. I go, bro, yes, I can. I've got you covered. Come here. I can tell that he's not a threat and I'm not worried about him robbing me. So I go to the car. I put the stuff down in the trunk, get my wallet out. And I had $7. That's all the cash I had. I was hoping I had more. But I go, hey, bro, here's $7. That's all I got. I hope that helps. And he looked at me with a big smile and he said, thank you. And he shuffled off. I called my wife. I told her about it. I felt great. There was this kind of tingling feeling that I had in my belly. And you get this feeling when, you know, you smile, and on a smaller level, when you smile at someone and they smile back at you, you get this feeling when you see your kid and they give you a hug. Same feeling. And it was awesome. It was so worth the price of admission, which was $7, that it's tilted me in the direction, and maybe this is a little bit selfish, but it's a better idea. I'm kinder to people now. I'll go out of my way to help them because it's worth it. Everybody wins. Look, times are tough. Stuff's expensive. How much money does a barista make? Probably not that much money. So you know what? I can afford to do it. When I buy my $7 cup of coffee, I'm tipping them $5. So, you know, if I get a meal and it's $15, I'm tipping the server $10 because I can afford to do that. And I don't know what they're making, but they're probably struggling right now because I'm noticing how much groceries cost and how much gas costs. But those are small things because I don't eat out that often. Right? And it's a balance. You can't get too generous and give away all your money.
It just changes the whole atmosphere, I think. I mean, you're coming, you know, all day long, I would imagine that person. And really, I mean, a lot of us, you know, I live a very privileged life, but there's so much negativity and people are, you know, it seems like people in general, there's just kind of a aggressiveness or a negativity that seems to be becoming the norm. And you can almost think of it as just combating that. Just, well, I'm gonna put positivity in the world, and No, I really admire that. Here's a question for you though, kind of on the opposite side of that, but I'm really curious. I use you as my counselor to help me figure out how to deal with the world. How do you deal with somebody who is a jerk or arrogant or cocky, like somebody the opposite way of that? Like you're just trying to be a nice person, you're just doing your thing, and you come across that crowd of people from the memes that you said, the French people kind of scoffing. How do you deal with that? Because my first reaction is it's stupid, I know, but it's like I want to set these people straight. I want them to know, I want them to know they messed with the wrong person. I'm going to set them straight, blah, blah, blah. It's so stupid. How do you deal with arrogant people?
You're going to use combat tactics. You're going to take, and this is something we learned in Afghanistan, you better take the high ground or the high ground will take you. And that's fundamentally real, and it applies to everything. So if I'm encountering somebody with a big ego, I am going to check my ego. Look, if our egos aren't going to bump up, if I just check my ego, it's like, oh, they want to take, and then a series of questions. What a big ego is always, there's a lot of insecurity underneath that. And people who are hurt other people, and people who are jackasses are in some kind of pain and they're broken. And so when I tell myself that, it helps me to give them a little bit more grace. What are tactics, techniques, and procedures that you can use in everyday life to deal with these people? There's a guy on social media. His name is Jefferson Fisher. He'll give you strategies on how to do that all day long. And typically it's about, pausing, not responding, let me correct myself, not reacting. You can respond, because I'm not telling you that you should not have any boundaries and allow people to treat you like crap. No, that's not what I'm espousing here. But how to do that in a way that's respectful and keeps you out of the ditch. They want to get down in the ditch, that's fine. You don't have to get in the mud with them. And really, are you going to care in 5 minutes or 5 years what that person thinks or says? Probably not. So, questions is the way that you approach this. When I was still in the Navy, when I came back from my 4th combat deployment to Afghanistan, and I got home, my wife was like, after being back for about 2 weeks, she's like, you're not the same person that left. Will you please see a counts, go try and find us, one of the psychologists at work. And I yelled at her. And as I was yelling at her, I was like, dude, what are you doing? She's trying to help you. She loves you. And you're not the same. This is 2009. I found a psych. It took me a little bit longer than, was I think appropriate. And the deal is it just aren't enough. There aren't enough psychs for everyone who needed them at that point in the war, 2009, 8 years at war. And there just weren't enough of them. So anyway, I started seeing the psych, and it was awesome. And, I had PTSD. Now, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about PTSD, and a lot of people think that, and PTSD is a lot of different things. A lot of it is like, you hear a loud noise and jump, or you freak out or whatever, or you have like a panic attack. For me, what PTSD is I had 8 months on that deployment of reinforcing all the neural pathways on what to do for a life or death scenario. Because every stressor essentially was a life or death. So there's neuroscience behind that. Every time I do that, I'm reinforcing those neural pathways, and come back. And now I've got stressors, and I'm reacting to them as if they're a life or death stressor. They're escalating all of my hormonal responses and all that, when it's just shit that doesn't matter. But that's because all those neural pathways have been reinforced. Of course, that's what happens. I went into an inpatient treatment, and I was really lucky, and I have a lot of gratitude that I was able to do it, because it cost a lot of money for me to be able to go to that and other soft guys to go to it, because everyone should go to it. The reality is, they couldn't do it for everybody. So I went to Bethesda. I went to this thing called NICO, which is the National Intrepid Center of Excellence. And it was a month-long embedded thing where they were trying to, look at, first of all, quantify the amount of traumatic brain injuries that I had and the PTSD that I had. Now, here's the thing. They both have the same symptoms, and you treat them the same way. And one of the biggest takeaways that I had from that was the concept of mindfulness. And, we did art therapy, they hit us with everything, checked our sleep, checked our diets, checked our exercise regimen, all that, because all that stuff helps. But my biggest takeaway was the yoga, which when I first went to the yoga classes, I was like really annoyed by it because I thought it was woo-woo. And then I was introduced to this concept of mindfulness. And so you've got one eye on the outside world and one eye on how you're reacting. So it started me on this journey. Then I retired. The next step on my journey was I quit drinking. And I was able to quit drinking by using psychedelics as a therapeutic deal. So it's not like I ate a handful of mushrooms and went to a Grateful Dead concert or the carnival like that, because that's recreational, that's separate. But there had been a lot of data on a lot of the podcasts that I was listening to with Peter Attia, Tim Ferriss, all that. Rogan even had guys talking about how helpful this psychedelic things is. And I wasn't comfortable with my relationship with alcohol because I was incapable of driving past a liquor store without going in and seeing what kind of craft beer they had and then buying a 6-pack. And in the moment, I was like, I shouldn't, I was drinking 2 to 3 beers every night and more on the weekends. And I knew it wasn't good for me, but it owned me. And I did not appreciate the fact that it owned me. And I knew it owned me. So I found a way to do it in a responsible manner where I had a guide who was there to watch and make sure that I was safe. And I had a designated thing, a list of things that I wanted to work through in that trip, and did a therapeutic dose of psilocybin. It's referred to as a hero dose and all that. And that was in January of 2019. And it went inside of me, and it helped me understand a lot of things. It helped me understand, so first of all, orient yourself towards the positive, because you're just going to be better off. It shuts your ego down for a bit in the experience and helps you see this other stuff. And so it helped with that. And then it also just went down inside of me, and whatever epigenetic switch was inside of me that made me crave alcohol, it turned it off.
Just almost instantly. When you came out of that, you didn't.
I came out and I was done. And there was still, I told my wife, I go, I think I'm done drinking.
What'd she think?
She was like, well, because she doesn't drink. She's like, well, okay, that's great. Because the side effects on my overall health since I've stopped drinking have been huge. I was on medication for my thyroid because I had low thyroid. And now that, and I believe that's because two drinks every night is completely jacking up your sleep.
Oh yeah, that stuff it stacks up
every night. Yeah, it stacks up because that's when your body is healing and doing everything else. And so now, I just had a full spectrum done on my blood. I have a little bit of work to do on my my LDLs, and my ApoB are high, and I need to work on that. But everything else is awesome. My testosterone's sitting at 864, and I'm not supplementing at anything for testosterone. I'm just trying to eat healthy and I believe sleeping. My thyroid is perfect. Everything else is good. So that alcohol, what did alcohol do for me? Well, I had a low level weird aggravation going, and I'd take 2 drinks and that would knock that back. It's no big deal. I can be around people in social situations where they're drinking, and I don't need to drink at all.
I quit drinking in 2010, I just woke up one day hungover and I just had it. I was just because the hangover would sometimes lead to like days of depression. And I was just like, man, screw this. I'm done. And I quit. And I really do think, and thankfully it wasn't a big deal. I just stopped. And, it, I really think it's one of the most important decisions I made. And thankfully it just wasn't a big deal, but I, I never want to be judgmental about people at all. Like my wife drinks, whatever, but I really think alcohol is so bad. And I've heard your buddy Jocko talk about it, and he's just very clear. Like that's something that he seems to have changed his mind on. And it just is it's like tying an anchor around your neck if you're trying to go swimming. It's just kind of pointless friction. At least that's the way I see it. But again, I don't want to be judgmental about people who do drink, but I can't stand it.
Yeah, if you really pay attention on all the pressures there are when you look at the media to drink, and if you watch any kind of TV shows, what are they're teaching you, hey, if something good happened, you're going to celebrate and you're going to drink. Oh, if something bad happened, we're now going to drink. Shoot, leads to you drinking every day. Thank you, rich corporations that sell alcohol. But whatever, I have these mantras that I tell myself, and one of them is discipline equals freedom. That's on that coin. Curiosity, kindness, and gratitude, like on the coin. And then another one that I stole from Rage Against the Machine, fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. I can see that stuff on the media or wherever else, and I just borrow that from Rage Against the Machine and just go, I'm not going to do that because it's not true.
Yeah, it makes people. I mean, I used to do this a different podcast for another organization, and it was this bizarre thing where they would contract with this big prison here in Colorado, and within the prison there were these amazing craftsmen who would do leather, make amazing stuff out of leather, whether saddles, bags, whatever. And so I went to this maximum security prison and interviewed these guys in the prison, and they were just amazing. Like some of the coolest guys you could ever meet. Very proud of their work. They had this community within the leather shop, and I didn't know anything about them when I got there. But when I got home, I looked them up online, and they had all done just some of the worst stuff you could imagine, violent crimes. And the common theme among all of them was that they were drunk when they did it. And these guys, like I looked at him, one of them was exactly my age. He kind of looked like me, and he was in there for life. And he was a good dude. Like he was proud of his work. He, just, there was nothing about him if I'd met him on the street that I would not have liked, yet he had done this horrible thing in the past. And all those guys were under the influence of alcohol when they committed their crimes. And it just made me so sad, I mean, just so sad.
Alcohol is one of the few drugs that actually makes people more aggressive and angrier. I don't know that we hear about people smoking a joint and then clobbering their wife or even having the motivation to go out and drive somewhere. But and this country realized that, and they tried prohibition, and unfortunately prohibition just doesn't work. And somewhere in the middle is what's going on. If you drink, I'm not judging you, but my life is way better since I quit. 2 drinks a day is not healthy for you. You can't get away with it. And Andrew Huberman has laid this out with the science. You can essentially have a drink once every 2 weeks and not have any negative ramifications on your health. Hey, if every once in a while, if you're super anxious and that cuts down the anxiety, then there's a balancing act that you have to figure out for you with your own health.
Well, I'm glad you were able to go on that journey. I mean, I'm sure that was quite I'm sure there was a lot of anxiety in the lead up to that psychedelic drug treatment, but it sounds like that has just really opened things up and been a great, very beneficial to you and your evolution just as an effective human. And I'm happy that you're continuing to make all this great progress. It's awesome to hear.
Yeah. And the key is, like, for those of you that are like, hear this and you're like, well, okay, that's something I want to look at. Make sure that you're doing it with folks that are responsible. I recommend drive up to Oregon where it's legal, or some of the other states where they're actually licensing these practitioners, because it's first of all, it's not a magic pill, and second of all, it if you do it in the wrong environment, it can do a lot of damage, and you can wind up worse off than you were before you did it. I wound up going down 2 years after that experience and doing the Ibogaine retreat in Mexico. There's a movie on Netflix now called Of Waves and War, I believe is what it is. And it's just talking about all the people that's helped. And Ibogaine is much more powerful than the psilocybin. It is also it's a little bit more dangerous because it could do things to your heart. So, where I went, there was a doctor there was a nurse on there. They were monitoring you for your heart rate, your O2, all that. And so it was essentially for 6 folks that did the retreat the same time I did. The staff was 5, so almost a 1-to-1 deal that they were taking very seriously, because it's serious stuff. You can have Ibogaine can give you a heart attack. And it's the psilocybin lasted about 4 hours, probably 6 hours total. Ibogaine was an 18-hour thing, and it was scary. But it took me on a journey that was really rough, where I had to go through a bunch of things in my life that I'm not proud of or were horrible. And then at the end of that experience, the medicine showed me basically all the things I have to be grateful for, and there's an awful lot. And so it was one of these experiences, and that's what pulled aside, I would say, like a curtain, and let me look through a window and realize, yeah, there's negative energy and positive energy, and they probably have different frequencies, and I have a choice on what I'm going to focus on. And the Stoics talked about this, right? They said you are what you pay attention to. So why not pay attention to the things that I have reasons to be gratitude for, And why not pay attention to all those things? And why not focus on being kind? Because if I'm paying attention to how I am when I'm kind, how good that makes me feel.
I love the self-reflection that you bring into your life, because in all the history I read, I love reading history and learning about amazing people. And sometimes there's this term I've heard called man of action, and it's these, you could say person of action, I think is a better term, but it's people that are getting stuff done and going. And a lot of times there's a lack of introspection with those kind of folks. And what I admire about you and Iris, and it seems that a lot of your colleagues at Echelon Front, is there's this focus on action, but there's also an ability to self-reflect a little bit. And I think you make it very, very clear that it's not easy, and it requires constant maintenance. It's not just one day you're going to wake up, you have it all figured out. I mean, you're going to be working on this for the rest of your life. And it's really cool to hear, for you to share this kind of stuff, because I think sometimes people like you in your line of work, from the distance, they can come off as kind of like superheroes and like, well, they got it figured out. But hearing that you struggle with, something might not be good for you, and you still did it. And just those little things, I think it carries a lot of weight with normal people like me. So I just really appreciate you being so open with all that stuff.
It's what made the SEAL teams great, is this, we have built into the culture of the SEAL teams, and the SEAL teams have got a lot of problems, don't get me wrong, but built into our culture, tactically on the battlefield, we were constantly, every time we did anything, we would debrief it. Hey, what did we do right? What could we do better next time? And so what that does is, if you're doing that all the time, guess what you're doing? You're constantly growing and you're constantly evolving. What I had to have an epiphany later on was that, oh, wait, this isn't just in us doing stuff as a group, but this is me every day doing this assessment. Oh, how'd that conversation go with my wife? How could I have done that better next time? All that. How's this interaction going on social media? How could I do better with it? How do I approach it?
Again, that's curiosity and humility at the same time. I guess curiosity breeds humility.
It helps. Curiosity is just like a big way to kind of check your ego.
Last kind of topic for you is I'm going to be seeing you in a few months in Nashville at the Echelon Front Muster, which I'm super excited about. I can't wait. And I was wondering, for people who aren't familiar with that, could you give a little overview of what that gathering is? And I think there are 3 of them this year. There's going to be one in San Diego, one in Nashville, one in Denver, I believe. Can you tell folks who aren't familiar with that about it? Because I think it's something that people should, if you're at all interested and you can make it happen, you should attend.
So to give everybody a 30,000 foot view, I work for a company called Echelon Front. We do leadership consulting and leadership training. And let me just spell something about leadership for everybody. Hey, leadership isn't something that you do to other people. Leadership is something that you do to yourself. So when you have leadership training, it's for everybody, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to make everybody better people. So the guys I work with are for Jocko Willink, Leif Babin. They wrote this awesome book called Extreme Ownership, came out in 2015. I read it while I was still on active duty. I put the stuff they talked about in the book into practice and saw it work. And when I put the principles that they discuss in that book into practice, I saw them work at work, obviously, but I also saw a huge improvement in my home life. So we do leadership consulting for everybody. First responders, mostly though, we're working with larger corporations or, different businesses. And then we also run these events, and the muster is a 2-day leadership event where you're basically immersed in the topics. Now, the beauty of this is at Echelon Front, we have, I think, 17 different instructors. All the instructors are there, and all the people that are there, there's 900 people typically go to these musters. They're all awesome people. And so it's 2 days of just being immersed in everybody talking about how to be better people and better leaders, and how we can be better for our communities, how we can be better for our families, and how you can apply this to your business so your business can grow and succeed. And that's going to benefit everyone around you. And so that's what the musters are about. And that's what Echelon Front is about. Most of our instructors are SEALs, Marines. Dave Burke just wrote this awesome book that I'll hit now called The Need to Lead. And it's fantastic. I'll mail you a copy of it. And but you know what? I recommend get the Audible, because Dave reads it and he's going to have all the inflections, and then get a hard copy of it as well, because it's fantastic. There's a chapter in there that's my favorite chapter in a lot of books I've read. Just the chapter's entitled "Listen." That's the best articulation of why it's important for a leader to listen more and talk less. So he went to Top Gun, and then he was a Top Gun instructor, basically wrote the new doctrine for our 5th generation fighters for the Marine Corps on how that, moving forward, the new doctrine for, air combat. So just awesome dude, awesome guy, awesome parent. But everybody's there, and you have the opportunity to talk to everybody on the breaks, because when the breaks happen, everyone's available. So they're a lot of fun. We do other events. We have these field training exercise events where we set up like tactical scenarios that reinforce all the stuff that we teach in leadership. So it's a great practical way, and it's a lot of fun to learn about leadership while you're doing a laser tag scenario. And then we have these battlefield events where we go to a Civil War battlefield, and we did the Battle of Little Bighorn as well. But we'll go to a battlefield and we'll talk about all the leadership decisions that were made there, good and bad, and how you look at those decisions and then apply them to whatever you're dealing with in life right now. So those are interesting. And we're doing Fredericksburg and Chancellorsville this year. That's in May. And then we have an executive leadership retreat, which is right up here by my house, called the Council. And that's about everything we do. And that's what I do. I fly all around the country talking to people essentially about how to be better people. And I can't express to you how lucky I am to have this job, to get to interact with great people all over the country. And then it gives me the freedom to live in a real rural area like I do, because not many work out here where I live.
Well, man, I'm just glad that you have decided to devote this, second chapter of your career to doing that kind of stuff. Because personally, even though this will be my first muster, I mean, personally, I've just learned so much from both you and Iris. And then, even though I don't know them, I've learned a lot from your colleagues. And I complain about the internet sometimes, but being able to listen to those podcasts and learn from those people, I'm a much better person because of it. Kind of final question for you. I mean, we could do this once a month and I would never run out of questions. So I never want to hassle you, but we need to be doing this more often. But in any kind of parting words, any way you'd like to wrap it up as we kind of finish things up?
Yeah. So you usually, I want to hit the books and then my deal. So obviously that extreme ownership, dichotomy of leadership strategy and tactics, and The Need to Lead by Dave Burke. I will also recommend Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. It's a book on negotiation. Really, it's a book about talking to people. And with that, The Next Conversation, which we brought him up earlier, but Jefferson Fisher, who has got a fantastic social media page, and he wrote a book, and the book is just outstanding. And it gives you a bunch of real tactics that you can use when someone's being condescending to you. What do I do? Or what do I do when someone says something hurtful to you? How to establish those boundaries, and then just how to interact with other people in a good way. The book's priceless for that. For a really fun fiction book, Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. Really, really good. They're making it into a movie. And then I read a lot of the self-help leadership type of books, but I can't do that all the time. And so I'm either delving into fantasy or, sci-fi. And Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archive, the first book is The Way of Kings. Best things in this genre that I've read since Lord of the Rings, because he's doing a fantastic job of sneaking in a bunch of life lessons into what is a really entertaining story with a bunch of rich characters. Brandon Sanderson is just, the guy's a genius. Advice to you as we part ways. Number one, slow down. Just slow down. Be present in the moment. When I make mistakes, it's because I'm in a big rush. And we had a saying in the SEAL teams: slow is fast, or slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Let me say that again. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. The only real time is the present. So be in it. When you prioritize things, you should prioritize your health. And that means that you should try to exercise every day and pay attention to what you're eating, have a good diet. You're just going to be happier. Your life's going to be better. And then number two, relationships. Those relationships are really, really important to the overall trajectory of your health. They are as important to exercise, diet, and sleep. So if we're going to do 4 pillars, that's what they are: exercise, diet, sleep, and relationships. And so that means make an effort to cultivate rich relationships with your family, your community, with your friends, And you can do that on social media by, when someone posts something, like it, and then say something nice about something that they just shared. It's easy. It takes a little bit more discipline to go, oh, shoot, I haven't talked to this person in a while, and do it. And it takes a little bit more energy to engage someone in conversation, when you're at the coffee shop. Talk to the barista. How's your day? Have a real conversation with them. There's a lots of evidence that your life will be better if you do that. So prioritize it. Prioritize those relationships. Try not to keep score. So transcend that. Let go of this thing of keeping score. I'm not saying that you don't have any boundaries and this means you allow someone to treat you like crap. No, you still have boundaries. And if someone's hurtful for you, don't tolerate that. Let them know, have boundaries. But the way I'm talking about keeping score is all those little petty ways that all of us do. I do it, and just let go of it.
It's great advice. And I mean, I really do think, not to center around me, but the thing about relationships, like when you came through town to do your consulting work in Colorado Springs, you had plenty to do. You didn't need to reach out to me and, take time to go out to dinner. And we did. And it was just a fun night. It improved. My family was so great, so excited to meet you. I mean, it helped me out. It expanded our relationship. And I mean, that's just one of these small little things that to you, it might not have meant much, but I mean, I think it meant a lot, but it took some effort and you did it, and it was just great. And those relationships just continue to grow. And man, I'm very proud to call you a friend. I appreciate your interest in everything I'm doing and your encouragement. And it's just been real awesome getting to know you and your family. And I'll look forward to seeing you in a few months.
Yeah. And that's really the positive side of social media, isn't it? It's got a lot of negative. It's got a lot of positive. You and I would never have met had we not interacted and then just been able to watch each other and go, oh shoot, this person is kind of like me. And that's why I hit you up, because I'm like, wow, it looks like, Ed and I have got a lot of the same values. We see him the same way. He's super cool. I'm in town. Why not see if he's free for dinner?
Well, man, I really appreciate it. You're the man. I learned so much. I'm excited to hang in Nashville, and we'll get you back on here a lot sooner than 5 years from now to do another of these.
Awesome. Thanks, Ed.
Hey, it's Ed again. Thanks so much for taking the time to listen to this episode. As always, Mountain and Prairie is listener supported through Patreon, with additional generous support from the Central Grasslands Roadmap, the Nature Conservancy, North Bridger Bison, and the Old Salt Co-op. If you enjoyed this conversation and want to hear more from me, you can sign up for my weekly email, Good News from the American West. It features a handful of quick, feel-good stories from around the West. No outrage, no inflammatory nonsense, just positive, uplifting, and occasionally funny stories that might improve your day. I also send out a bi-monthly book recommendation email, which is a separate email list that you can sign up for through the website. For those of you who like social media, you can find me on Instagram or LinkedIn. But really, the best place to go for everything is mountainandprairie.com. A huge thank you to my editor and producer, Keely Larson, for her care, creativity, and craftsmanship in putting these episodes together. And, as always, thank you for listening.